Was the Cavaliers and Thunder matchup on Wednesday a sign of things to come? And could Cleveland get more than 2 All-Stars into the All-Star game coming up next month? Spencer Davies, Spencer German. We talk about it next on the Courtside with the Cavaliers on SI podcast. Coming your way right now. Welcome on in. Spencer German, Spencer Davies with you as we talk about what it's been. Obviously, it continues to be an incredible Cavaliers season. 33-2 now, or 33-2, 33-4 now on the season. I'm thinking they're the Golden State Warriors, obviously, from 2016. I don't know. I guess I just really want them to break the record. But and so much to talk about once again after what I think was, I think Spence, there's a case to be made. Like this was the like a banner week of the season. Like in terms of the opponents they played, they finished the West Coast trip, come home, end up beating the Thunder, have a back-to-back, and they complete that with a really good performance from Darius Garland. So I think there's a lot to talk about, and I think there were some more statements made by a team that, for whatever reason, still continues to get some doubters out there who just don't think this is real, and I just don't understand why.
I'm going to, again, probably stop you short on the doubters being the majority at this point of the year. As I said, go ahead.
It's not that I think it's the majority of people. I'm just kind of perplexed as to how there's any doubters left. Because if this that's what I mean. Like if this, I understand where, the small market team thing comes into play, and like you just kind of don't trust some of these small market teams. But like nobody was doubting. I mentioned Golden State. Like when Golden State was going on their incredible season that they had, nobody was doubting that they were a great team. Maybe it was because they made a finals appearance the year before. I don't know. But like nobody doubted that team was great. So at this point, like, I just think I think you're just a hater if you, or you're just like a doubtful Cavs fan if you have any reason not to think this team is good, because they've passed every test that they could possibly pass at this point. It's fun to watch.
They really have. And I think when you look at the body of work, it hasn't mattered if they've played a really good team or a really bad team. They've had the same level of focus every single night. Now, let's kind of pump the brakes on that one, because yesterday, Kenny Atkinson, he didn't rip into him, but he was like, that was probably the first time that I saw us not collectively have the same energy for a game in preparing for an opponent. But we also have to talk about how there's an emotional high you're coming off of when you beat a team like the Thunder the previous night, and how do you possibly have the same energy level and level of focus after doing that against one of the best teams in the NBA and the top team in the West. So we saw the Raptors shot the lights out against the Cavs. They shot 60% from the field, over 40% from deep, a team that had struggled in the offensive area for the majority of the last week or so. And the Cavs just didn't have their right defensive principles. They were ball watching a lot. They got beat on back cuts, and they were just allowing too many guys to beat them off the dribble from the perimeter and getting into the paint, which then resulted in a lot of open looks. So if you want to actually talk about that, that's kind of more, interesting to me, because we've been talking about the same stuff all season long about how this is a team that's damn near perfect, and they still are. But over the last couple of games, given up over 120 points in two straight games, something that they want to clean up. But you're really grasping at straws if you can't figure out that this is one of the best offensive teams in basketball, if not the best team offensively as far as execution and knowing each other's spots and the chemistry and everything of the above.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about, obviously, the Raptors game a little bit, especially the performance from Darius Garland. And I, to your point, like I know Kenny sort of mentioned after that game, like it was the first time that they kind of just relied on one person to really carry them, and that's kind of a rarity for this team. But we'll talk about that here in a second, because going back to the Thunder game, this was kind of touted as this finals potential finals. And it's interesting because there always is the narrative about like smaller markets and how that doesn't sell and all this different stuff. But like Spence, I don't know, like you and I both came away like astonished, just in awe of that game and how exciting it was and how fun it was. And I don't want to make this about like larger NBA issues here, but in a league where, you have the load management problem, and you have teams that sometimes like don't take nights off. you got this brilliant performance from two teams that are young, have up and coming rising stars on them, and that do take every game seriously and play hard every night. And listen, like if that is a finals preview, sign me up, because that is the brand of basketball that the NBA should be embracing more and should be, touting as like what they are about. That is the league that they want to be. They want to be teams playing hard every night, teams giving you 30 lead changes, Spence. I think there was like nines throughout that game. It was so exciting. It was great basketball. It was the type of basketball that when the old heads come up and say, well, back in my day, basketball was just better and blah, blah, blah. Like that's the type of thing you think of. Maybe not so much scoring, because there's, the scoring numbers weren't quite as high back then. But even still, like that should make it more exciting. But it's just the fact that like it's back and forth. It's fun. It's like both teams within their systems are getting the open looks, and they're scoring in the paint. They're scoring outside. It wasn't just a bunch of 3-point shooting. It was, we can attack you inside, we can attack you outside. It was all within a rhythm of their offenses. I hope the NBA took notes of that game. And I hope that if that is a true finals preview, knock on wood, that like they embrace that and they don't make it about like, well, it's small market teams and all this stuff, because those two teams showed you the other night that they would put on an absolute show on a big, massive stage like the NBA finals would be.
And I got some numbers for you here, actually, because
Okay.
it performed really well. And I know that we love ratings talk around here on Cavaliers on SI Podcast. But seriously, though, 1.87 million viewers on ESPN. That's up 20% versus the comparable window last year. It peaked with 2.5 million viewers. And it had, like you said, 30 lead changes. And I think the largest lead was 8. For either team. So back and forth affair. If you want to look stylistically, they are actually pretty different offensively. One team like Oklahoma City, they're a little bit more Shai Gilgeous-Alexander centric. The stuff evolves around him. And then like once you start closing on to him, that's when the doubles lead to trying to get guys like Lou Dort to beat you. And you got, Aaron Wiggins, and you have all these sorts of, Jalen Williams is a star rising. So I wouldn't even put him in that role player category anymore. Yeah. But, like, they have other weapons to beat you. Unfortunately, they did not have Chet Holmgren. They did not have Alex Caruso. But they did have Isaiah Hartenstein there in the middle, who had given the Cavs problems in the past, like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And I'm sure that we'll get into that, or if you want to just refer back to our post-game show from that night. But Jared Allen and Evan Mobley just showed Isaiah Hartenstein they are not the same players that they were 2 years ago. And they were willing to take on the physical challenge, battling for every rebound and every loose ball, defensively, offensively, whatever it had to be. And that was the story of the game. It was the two bigs, and Darius Garland constantly harps on how good those bigs have been, whether it's been together, whether it's been one of them on the floor, or neither of on the floor with Dean Wade there at the 5. Their bigs have been the story of the season, and it starts with Jay and Evan doing their thing on both ends, and out of the playmaking, out of the short roll, contesting at the rim, but also switching out onto the perimeter. They do so much other things. And especially a guy like Jared Allen, he doesn't get as much love because he's quote unquote 4th in the ranking of the core 4 from a lot of people's eyes. But he can be the most important guy on the floor every night. And sometimes it ain't going to come in the box score. It's going to come with a hard screen set like he did to Davion Mitchell on Thursday, just absolutely ramming that guy when he was trying to defend Darius Garland. Terrific job at a lot of things that people don't see on the stat sheet. But he has been in the stat sheet the last week and a half or so, starting with that West Coast road trip. He's been a double-double machine, and they're trying to get him a late push for an All-Star game push. And I'm sure we're going to get into that conversation more as we go along in this podcast. But, they absolutely are deserving of these all-star spots. I don't know if you can get 4 in, though.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk more about the all-star thing here in a second. But, yeah, like going back to the Thunder game and hearing those ratings, that is encouraging to me, because it shows that, like, maybe there is an appetite for that, and that fans are at least – maybe they care more about good basketball than they do just like seeing the team that LeBron plays for or the Celtics every night. And so I'm encouraged by that. I do want to know from your perspective, Spence, like, because you talked about stylistically the two teams are a little bit different. How does this matchup change if Chet Holmgren is in there, especially knowing that they're coming down the pike here? They play again next week and kind of the rematch in OKC, and we might get a chance to actually see him be part of the matchup this time around.
I think that's still kind of jumping the gun a little bit with Chet. He did get off crutches. We know that. Mark Daigneault isn't too privy to share with the media, at least, where he is in his progression. Yeah. But it is good to see that he was traveling with the team on this really rigorous road trip, by the way. They played Boston on Sunday. They came to Cleveland last night or 2 nights ago, and now they get to play New York. Like, what an East Coast road trip for them, first of all. But with Chet, it's so much more of a dynamism to the offensive end because he's able to ball handle, he's able to shoot, and we know defensively how insanely perfect his timing is, whether it's going for steals, altering shots, blocking shots. He is a legitimate all-star caliber type of player. So yes, that makes a huge difference. Like I'm not saying that to disparage the Cavaliers because the Thunder had won 15 games coming into that contest against Cleveland. But Chet makes a huge difference. I think Alex Caruso makes a huge difference. He plays, anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes a night for the Thunder, but he is a pest. He is a pit bull as far as tracking down loose balls and getting into guys defensively. He's one of the best defenders and irritants that it is in the NBA, which I feel like Caruso and Hartenstein together, perfect pieces for this young and developing Thunder team who, young and developing, but also has already been to the mountaintop in the regular season at least, at the top of the Western Conference. Cavs, on the other hand, they're veteran-laden, but Darius Garland and Evan Mobley taking the steps that they've taken, Jarrett Allen continuing to develop, I think has been paramount to them because they've been surrounded by guys like Donovan Mitchell and Karis LeVert. And, you got the playoff guys, if you want to really look at that, like George Niang and Max Strus, who have been there, done that. Strus especially having been in the finals, and George Niang being a part of a ton of playoff teams and postseason experience. And Tristan Thompson, somebody we really rarely talk about, having that voice in the locker room, always uplifting his teammates, especially those core 4 members, and trying to show them and tell them that the playoffs is what matters. Let's stay grounded. And that attitude obviously comes over from Donovan Mitchell and Kenny Atkinson being the one that's really grounded in all of this.
Yeah, no, I think that's all really well said. And obviously, like, having those guys back would make a difference for the Thunder. We'll see what that looks like this week. Like you said, probably a bit too optimistic for Chet if he's going to make it back this week, but that could change the dynamics if they do meet in the finals and what that sort of looks like. You mentioned the progress of Darius Garland and the growth he's shown this year. And I do think it's interesting. Like, I thought Thursday was the perfect storm for like a trap game, if you will. Like, emotional win over the Thunder. There was so much hype about that game. And in previous years, they probably just, you chalk that one up as a loss. But this year, like, you go into these back-to-back situations, Spence, and you just have a feel like you can't not watch it. Like, I'm not saying people were turning off the Cavs on second night of back-to-backs before, but I feel like in previous seasons, you could always kind of assume, like, they're probably going to lose this one just because it's the second night of a back-to-back, and those aren't really easy, especially a second night of a back-to-back without Donovan Mitchell. But, like, last night, and you alluded to it, like Kenny Atkinson, they probably didn't play very well as a whole team, but another example of they can win in different ways. And we view Donovan Mitchell as the guy that has to, like, take over for this team when it matters most in games. But I think Darius Garland, I mean, he's like one of the, if not, he might be the top guy in the NBA in terms of, like, clutch numbers right now. Like, he is putting up some incredible numbers in clutch time. And he showed you that again by dropping 40 on the Raptors to basically will the Cavs to victory. And it's like the latest just cherry on top of his season, which has just been this, I don't even want to call it like a renaissance season because, like we've talked about numerous times, like, we both knew this was in DG. Like, he was an all-star several years ago. This was always the path that we thought he could be on and that he could get to. So it's not like I call it a renaissance season, maybe just like a bounce back season from jaw injury last year and all that. But it's the latest example of just how incredible he's been and how incredible of a player he is and how well he fits this Cavaliers team.
It's a combination of getting back to who he was during that All-Star season, but also not being so pressured, playing with a clear mind.
Yeah, he's
making sure that Kenny's putting him in the right position to succeed, obviously increasing that shot profile from beyond the arc, not being afraid to attack the paint. But the thing about his 40 ball last night, and I put this on with Megs when we were talking after the game, was that 40 ball was an old school 40 ball. He went 4 of 7 from deep, but that man went 14 of 22 from the field and was 8 of 9 from the free throw stripe. He was attacking downhill all second half. He was awesome. Whether it was matching up against Scotty Barnes, trying to get past Davion Mitchell. RJ Barrett picked him up a few times, but he was able to kind of turn the corner and use that floater off the glass. He was able to get some layups, just darting straight to the basket because he was just too fast. But he had them on their heels all night. And to do that against a team like the Raptors, we know Toronto has a bunch of guys that are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". They have some really long guys. Chris Boucher, great game, by the way, on Thursday. But, that's not easy to do when you're DG's size. But he was fearless. He went into the paint and was finishing at a very high rate, and that led to him being able to distribute. And he just has that balance. He knows when to go. But, as you said, willed them to the finish line. Kenny Atkinson said yesterday, that was the first time he felt like only one guy really stood out, and that Darius carried them. And to say that Darius carried them, that's almost like you see Donovan Mitchell carry the team numerous times last year. But that trickling over to Darius now, if he's able to do that, and if something happens, that is huge. That is a luxury to be able to do that and have that kind of ability and that confidence to do it. I think for me, with DG, it's just kind of that he's found a good niche within this team. And it's just one of those things if you need me to do this in this spot, yeah, I got you. And that was an incredibly efficient 40 for Darius, and it was well earned. And you brought up the fact that it might have been a trap game. Kenny was fully prepared coming into the conference room. He was like, I was ready to address a loss in that one because, every once in a while you have stinkers, but that's why it's so rare that this team has 4 losses through 37 games, because you usually have 10, 11 of those throughout a regular season. Yeah. But that's what makes this team so hard to beat and so difficult to beat. Yeah. And it's just a testament to their work and the way that they're never giving up. But they can't be reliant on the offense. That's the big part that Kenny alluded to, and I know that I'm repeating a lot of the points that Kenny said, so make sure when you're watching this on YouTube that you go over
the show with Kenny Atkinson. But okay,
yeah, go to his post game. He had a lot of good stuff to say, the good critical, constructive criticism that he had to say about the team. And after that,
but let me say this: you don't want to see the Cavs win that way very often, where they have to rely on one guy.
No,
but that is such a luxury. When not only do you have Donovan Mitchell, who can do that because he's been in this league a long time doing that, but when you have other guys that you just and that's again, you mentioned how hard it is to beat this team, for that, for the reasons you just laid out. Part of that is even when you think, okay, they don't have their best player, okay, we got a chance in this game. Nope, here's Darius Garland going for 40, and then even when you think Darius Garland's having an off night and Mitchell's maybe is all right, well, here's Evan Mobley going for 40. They have because the way Evan Mobley's evolved, their games have all just flawlessly synced together. And it's you have this, your fallback plan. If your fallback plan is well, hey, if our offense isn't working one night, we have Donovan Mitchell who can take over, or Darius Garland who can take over, or Evan Mobley who can take over. That's a pretty good fallback plan. Most teams would kill to have something like that. So, and I think there has been moments where you've seen Evan Mobley take over in games. You've had to see DG hit the game winner again, Donovan hit the game winner against the Bucks early in the season, and obviously you got DG on Thursday. So, I think that just speaks to how deep this team is and the luxury that they've been. And I don't want to make this question sort of about who's more whatever. I don't want to make it a pissy match, if you will. But I was going to kind of throw out there this idea of you have the evolution, the return of DG, if you will, the evolution of Evan Mobley, but the return of DG's game. At this point in the season, because I do think DG hasn't been talked about maybe enough, but who do you think's been more critical to the Cavs being where they're at? And again, I'm not trying to make this he's indispensable or not. I'm not trying to make it about that at all. I'm just kind of curious, your thoughts on who of those two, who's been more pivotal in helping the team get to where they are right now?
I would say Ev, and I think DG would even say Ev, and I think Donovan would say Ev, and they love that guy. They know the talent he possesses.
Well,
They've
we know how
continued to
important-
talk about it behind the scenes. He is just so dynamic in what he's able to bring to the table now that we've seen it offensively under Kenny Atkinson and the way he's ball handling, he's pushing it in the open floor. I think Brian Windhurst referred to him as like a Draymond Green type, the way that Kenny Atkinson is using him.
That was really good. That was really well said, I thought.
I've said that in the past myself. Like, he should be that guy that isn't just stuck on the block or just stuck in the dunker spot. You have to put the ball in his hands, let him make mistakes, have him handle the ball. If he turns it over because he's got a little bit of a loose dribble, so be it. You know, he's got to get through that stuff. But the way that he processes the game and the way that he's able to play make out of the short roll, but also find guys on the backdoor cuts and to now add the fadeaway mid-range to the game and to step out and hit the threes, not just the catch-shoot threes that are wide open. It's also ones where he's taking them off the dribble and shooting some threes now. He's not afraid to shoot with a little bit of a contest coming his way, which he shouldn't be because he's 7 foot tall. Those are the things that we wanted to see from Evan Mobley, but they're just now starting to come to fruition, and it's starting to become consistent now, which is really scary for the rest of the league because you know how good Donovan Mitchell is. You know how good Darius Garland is. And when those guys are off the ball, and Evan, you don't know whether he's going to drive an attack or he's going to shoot because you're trying to close out on him, you're in a world of hurt if you're a defense. So pick your poison if you're an opponent right now against the Cavs.
I do think the answer is Evan, and part of that is just like we knew how important he was going to be to this team, taking that next step and you know, cementing themselves in moving forward. Like the future of this franchise kind of started and revolved around him largely. But like I can't say enough about DG playing the way that he has, and I think what's so remarkable about this year for him, Spence, too, is unselfishness. Like all these guys have had to concede a little bit, right? Like DG's had to, Donovan's had to, because they have so many guys that can impact the game in a meaningful way, and there's only one ball to go around. But like, especially with Garland, like he came in, he was drafted here and probably thought like he was the point guard of this team for like years to come. And, you know, he was going to be like that guy, and he's kind of had to share with Donovan. But I think what's interesting about this year too is like he has figured out more so where to like pick his spots. Like he's figured out like when he needs to sort of assert himself and when he can take a step back. And I think that's a lot different from last year, where I don't really think he ever kind of found that rhythm or that system that kind of worked for him. And so I can't say enough about, again, like his unselfishness and wanting to kind of accept this different role. I'll throw this up there real quick. You mentioned Anthony Meglin, our good friend and colleague here at the site. He says Evans also improved his game so much that three-point shot is real, and he is sturdy down low. So, yeah, I think that's well said on Evan. But anyway, I know you wanted to say something about DG.
Yeah, on DG, I think it's just that he's not hesitating anymore. He is making decisions. Whatever happens, if it gets turned over, oh, well. He's not, but the thing is, he's not turning it over. He's keeping dribbles alive, and he's not forcing passes, and he's not forcing shots. He's finding the right gaps. He's finding the right shots, and the way he finds his teammates, like, have you seen his passes this year? He's always been really good at distributing, don't get me wrong, but this year, there is just a different flair to the passes he has. Like, he's playing off 2 feet, getting guys in the air on pump fakes, and then finding J.A. or Evan down low. He's getting into the teeth of the defense and then just firing bullets out to the corners. There was one in Dallas that was just a freak pass. Like, it was passed up the floor in a fast break situation. I think it was Donovan who flipped it over to him in the corner. And before Darius even caught it, and basically as soon as the ball touched his hands, he just whipped this thing into Ev for an easy dunk. Like, these split-second reads and situations like that is where Darius is thriving. So even though I'm saying that Evan's the one that, you know, has maybe more impact on the team's ceiling, so to speak, DG's comeuppance is also a big part of this.
Agreed. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that leads nicely into the main topic we want to get into here to sort of wrap up the show, which centers around the All-Star game coming up here next month. And we just rattled off like how good Mitchell's been, how good Evan's been, how good DG's been. And I mean, there's
And
a case.
JA.
There's a case. I was gonna say there's a case to be made that JA's been equally as important and like that he should be in the All-Star conversation. But I just don't know how you get 4 All-Stars in from one team. That seems impossible. But I will say, like, the prospect of 3 even feels a little daunting, and it doesn't feel right that they're not going to get 3 potentially because all these guys are deserving. But as things stand right now, Spence, the guards, Mitchell is number 2 in the voting behind just LaMelo Ball. So Donovan, we all assume Donovan's making it without any questions. Like, best player on the best team in the league, of course he's going to make it. But Garland finds himself 9th on the guards list. And there's one person in particular ahead of him that is just mind-boggling, and Jordan Poole from the Wizards somehow has more votes than Darius Garland. So somehow we got to change that because that seems preposterous. And then Evan Mobley is currently 8th for the front court players. I think the players in front of him make some, like Franz Wagner's in front of him. Jimmy Butler's the one that's Jimmy Butler's only there on name alone, but like he's not even having a great season. He's now suspended 7 games, but people just love Jimmy Butler, so he's ahead of him. And even Paolo hasn't played, Spence, since the game before the Cavs played the Magic. Like, he's been out for months. I don't understand how Paolo is, and that's no disrespect to Paolo because Paolo's a good player, but he's not playing right now. Like, this is mind-boggling to me that even he's ahead of Evan Mobley. But realistically, how many All-Stars do you think the Cavs end up with, and what would it take for them to get a 3rd?
I think they end up with 2. I think you can bank on them getting 2. I don't know if you're getting 2 starters. It would be cool to see DG and Don starting awesome in an All-Star game in San Francisco. It would be pretty cool, but I don't think that's going to happen. 3 is really tough to do when you have as much talent as you do in this league, and you got to shoe in Celtics, right? Like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I'm going to get back on my
soapbox though, Spence, because
here we go.
This is the small market thing coming into play again, because the Warriors never had any issues getting 3 when they were at the peak of their powers. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
It was always Steph, Clay, Draymond, always near the top of the voting.
Yep.
They were always up there. Like, there was never any questions about that. Like, best team in the NBA, everyone's talking about them, so they got 3 in. Cavs can't get any love around here, and Evan, like, even the idea that like they only have 1 that's like a for sure right now is kind of perplexing to me. Like, it's the best team in the NBA. And so I do blame on some level, like the big networks that aren't putting their games on TV as much, and the people who are like downplaying their success and all that. Like, this is where that stuff matters, because if they were talking up the Cavs, I think more people would be willing to vote for them. But because they're not on TV and they're only watching LeBron and whoever, that's no disrespect to LeBron. We all love LeBron here. But like, it stinks. Like, it's that small market mentality that the Cavs have to kind of get over. But if it was if it was a bigger market and the Cavs had this record, those 3 guys would undoubtedly be like top 5 in each of their respective position groups.
I think this is also an overarching conversation too. Like, maybe if you look back at those Warriors teams, at least early on, like when they won their first championship and then they went 73-9, all that good stuff. Like, that's really when like social media and like Twitter really started to take off. And then now you look at today, so much of the All-Star game is popularity. I remember one year, I think I remember that Boban Marjanovic had a bunch of votes and was going to be voted in by the fans. Like, and I love Boban. Everyone loved Boban. But there's a lot of people that gravitate towards LaMelo Ball because he's just this fun-loving kid that loves to play the game and has this just like really fun style of basketball, I guess you could call it. A very loose style of basketball. Do I agree with it as a basketball purist? No. But you can't say that
has,
a guy
8 wins, I think, this year. 8
correct. Wins? I'm giving you the case.
I know. I'm not mad at you. The Cavs have less
yes.
losses than Charlotte has wins.
Correct. Yes,
like,
and that's where it's a popularity contest there, Spence. That's what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Jordan Poole, for example, like always goes viral because of the faces he makes or the celebrations he does after.
He got punched by Draymond, so everybody remembers that. But
I don't think that's even the case anymore about that. Like, he's making up celebrations after he hits a 3, like he does the Poole celebration.
Okay, but
I'm talking to you from that perspective. I'm not saying I agree with it.
I get it,
yes.
But here's my take on Jordan Poole, Spence. I think he is only the known player that he is because he got punched by Draymond. I think that did more, like, how they say there's no such thing as bad publicity? I think he got punched by Draymond, became famous from the incident, whether or not he's a great player or just a good player or whatever can be debated. But I think like that has escalated his status to a level that like he's probably more like a middle, he's a good player, but I don't know he's like a great player. But he's elevated by the fact that he got famous from this one incident.
I don't know, that championship that he won with the Warriors, he was pretty damn good that season. So I will disagree. I'll disagree with you on that one. If you want to go ahead and talk about like Kyle Kuzma in that light, then I mean, like, it's kind of similar, right?
Harrison Barnes won a championship with the Warriors, and he was important to that first one. And then we haven't heard Harrison Barnes' name in years.
I'm not going there. No, Jordan Poole was important to that championip team, and so was Harrison Barnes. But the usage differences, we're getting completely off the rails here now. But hey, that's why it's good that this is our podcast.
I told you I was getting on my soapbox, fan.
I'm with you though. Like, if they can get that kind of love, why can't this team get that kind of love? Honestly, it's probably because they haven't done it in the playoffs, and that goes back again to the original conversation that Donovan Mitchell always has. Like, this does not matter until, and I'm not going to say it again because we say it every single time, but you can't make time go faster. So It's just one of those things where they gotta earn it in the eyes of the casual. I think that a lot of people that watch basketball are in NBA circles and executives and agents. They see how good they are. They know they're for real. So, and most importantly, I think this is something we don't address enough. Inside the building, they believe it.
Yeah.
That locker room believes it. Damn everybody else if they want to say, this isn't real. This is a mirage. Nope. Not in their eyes. Not in their eyes. And they play like it, and they handle themselves like it. And they're mature on the court. They're mature off the court when they have to be. And they're a really fun group to be around and a very talented group to be around. And as I said in last week's podcast, Kenny Atkinson's just the mad scientist mixing the potions together.
I think that's well said. And hopefully those ratings from the game against the Thunder are evidence that people are starting to buy into the fact that this Cavs team is for real, and they're going to take it more seriously.
6 days, baby.
And
6
that the
days for that
casuals
rematch.
are getting back on board. So, yeah, we do get a rematch of that one coming up next week. I'm sure Spence and I have plenty to say about that when we get together with you guys, as always. But I do want to implore you to head on over to the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI YouTube channel. You can follow, subscribe, whatever you want to call it, review, leave us a comment over there on the podcast or any of the videos that we have over there. Spence does a tremendous job cutting up every single night the post-game comments from Kenny Atkinson, players, everybody. And obviously we have more content like this, including our post-game reactions and more episodes of the podcast that you can find as well. We also encourage you to head on over to Cleveland Cavaliers on SI, the actual website, where you can find any of our written content from throughout the season and throughout this past week, which obviously had some exciting games for the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's going to do it for Spencer Davies. I'm Spencer German, signing off with another episode of Courtside with the Cavs on SI in the books. We will talk to you guys again on Sunday when the Cavs are back at it from Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Take care, and we'll talk to you guys soon.